Good afternoon, good day, good morning, good night. Peace to everybody tuning in, to your family, to your loved ones, to your soul, to your spirit. This is a marvelous. That is what I go by. Happy New Year and all of that good stuff. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time and attention because your time and attention is two things that you cannot get back. So I value that and treasure that, and I appreciate you for that. And please subscribe, please like and share, because the more that takes place, the more I could provide certain content that might be a little off the beaten path, but definitely necessary. So with that, today I wanted to talk about the manosphere, right? I'll explain what that is, and also the current, from what I perceive, gender wars that's going on in the world and mostly in America. And these gender wars that's going on is causing a lot of division, right? It's causing a lot of opposition between men and women. And in an age now where um, even saying men and women can be offensive, which sounds crazy, it's important to kind of put things in context and kind of put things out there to improve the communication amongst the sexes so that we can have healthier relationships, healthier families, and pretty much not to sound all teary-eyed, but make the world a better place. And right now, there's a lot of tension that's stopping that from happening. So that's why I wanted to go pretty much talk about it, especially from a male perspective, and also address what's going on and why you see a lot of men operating in a certain way. And the label that's put on the way men are operating is called the manosphere. And under that manosphere umbrella, you have a lot of different subgroups that have been categorized and labeled as, I guess, a reflection or offshoot of men's frustrations and their anger towards their position in life, and especially in regards to their position and relationship towards women. So that's what this video is about, and it's also going to cover, since this is a growing movement amongst men, how the government is infiltrating these organizations, and we're going to see exactly why they're infiltrating it. You know, we're going to go over the reasons why they say the government, they, is infiltrating, as well as the possible real reasons, not the front reasons. And also go over Myron Gaines, the gentleman who has a podcast called Fresh and Fit, who is one of the faces, but I think he's also an agent as well, meant to kind of distract the manosphere movement, whichever part of it is sincere, as part of a government operation and plan to kind of break up men asserting their rights in various ways. So that's what this video is about. So there's a lot of division in a lot of different areas, right? You got race division, you got economic division, you have generational division, okay? So you have a lot of division that's taking place. What I'm noticing, though, is that this gender war, this gender division is becoming big. And it became big during the last two presidencies, starting with Barack Obama, who kicked it off, and then Trump, who just pretty much threw more gasoline on it. So between those two presidents, you've seen the gender wars reach crazy, crazy levels right now. So we're at like the rising highs and peaks of this opposition between men and women. And it's even more pronounced when you're talking about black men and black women. The clashes is insane. You know, it's beyond toxic. Like whatever's above toxic is where it's at, especially in the black community. So that's why I wanted to do this video to shed some light on that. So there was, or there is, not was, there's a document that's out. And this document is pretty much, might as well say it's a government document, because it was written with the full backing of the government, Homeland Security, FEMA, and things of that nature. So the question is, why would the government even be involved in men asserting their rights? right? I mean, the opposite is the case in the media where you have feminism, which is pretty much cheerleaded every step of the way, and there's pretty much no opposition with that in the mainstream media, social media, and in the populace. But now that you have men, um, primarily Caucasian men, that initiated this in the mainstream, now all of a sudden it's something that's very serious to the point where the government looks at it as a threat. So the question is why, right? Why is it so detrimental from the perspective of the government that you have men asserting their rights in their masculinity? And you don't see that when it comes to femininity. So on the surface, it would seem like, what's the big deal? You know, so what feminism is in the play? Maybe they should be regulated, but that's a question that we need to look at. You know, so I wanted to kind of read to show evidence that the government is indeed infiltrating the manosphere and is indeed impeding upon men looking to assert their rights. And I want to lay that down to show that this is the very definition of a conspiracy. It's the very definition of government infiltration. Because if the government is seeing men's rights as a threat, then that's something that men should be aware of, especially when they're vocal. Because you never know what can be considered as detrimental in your actions, and you're thinking you're just voicing your opinion or you're just asserting your masculinity. You could be considered a threat to America. And that's the main reason why I wanted to do this video, on top of the fact that there's gender wars. So this document is called Mapping the Manosphere, a social network analysis of the manosphere on Reddit. So I'm going to go over how vital Reddit is to the manosphere. But this document, all right, let's give some context to this document. This document was written by Kelly Fitzgerald. Sounds like a woman, right? And this document, the report date for this document was December 20th. Now remember that date. Remember that month and year, December 20th, 2020, pardon me. Not 2020th, December 2020. Remember that, because as I go further in the video, I know this is a slow build up. People are like, yo, make sure videos. Sometimes, you know, you just got to make the video. And if it's short, it's short. If it's not, it's not. You tune in when you can, tune out when you want. So I want to read some things from here just to give some context to show that this is indeed a government orchestrated document with the sole intent of shedding light on the manosphere, with the sole intent of not just breaking up the manosphere, but also quieting it down to the point to where men are totally assimilated to the narrative of feminism, of homosexuality, and softening men up so they could be acclimated to whatever is pushed in the mainstream to make men more feminine. So in this document, she gives acknowledgments to certain individuals that helped her, right? And when you look at the acknowledgement, it shows clearly that this is government. She says, I would like to thank all the incredibly talented and dedicated instructors and administration at the Center for Homeland Defense and Security. So right there, this is telling you that this is Homeland Security. It's on their radar. So men's rights are so strong right now in terms of men asserting them that Homeland Security is involved, okay? And it says, I would not have got into the program or have been able to maintain my participation without the support of my coworkers and leadership at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA. Now, that's laying the blueprint that government is all over this movement of men asserting their rights, period. Okay? So that's showing you that there's when you see things like this, it's showing you that the world as you know it is shifting right in front of your eyes. It's these type of things in all different areas, all different industries that reflect global change. So when you look at history books, when you study history and you see major events that happen, it's these type of things that happen very quietly that reflect a change in how human beings operate. On the mainstream, on the big scale, you have things like a pandemic, which clearly changes the landscape of humanity. Then, outside of these big major events, you have quiet things that reflect the way people think, the way society has their own narrative, and the way human beings interact with each other that don't get as much press, but it slowly creeps into the psychology of human beings and the citizens within a given place, and then it sets the landscape for how human beings should act. This is one of those things right here. Okay? So when you see Homeland Security involved, that means that the movement that's taking place is not only a threat, but it's something that says it's empowering to the people that's taking it. We're going to go over that. So this also says, pardon me with the reading, but the reading is very important to give context. It says, hegemonic masculinity suggests one privileged performance of manhood exists. White, heterosexual, wealthy, physically intimidating, able-bodied, brutally competitive, crisis-prone, virile, dominant, emotionally available, and unable to admit weakness. This type of man must not only demonstrate these characteristics, but also reject people who challenge them. In other words, it is not enough for a man to be heterosexual, he must also be homophobic. They're explaining the main psychology of the manosphere and men asserting their rights. Okay, this is what they're assessing in this study. This is a comprehensive study, it's like 100 pages. It's a good read. A fundamental element of hegemonic masculinity, then, is that women exist as potential sexual objects for men, while men are negated as sexual objects for men. Women provide heterosexual men with sexual validation and must compete with each other for this. Now, why is that important? When you look at how they broke that down and how they're describing the main tenet of the manosphere, it's telling you the imaginative and the visual archetype for who's the main representative of this movement of men asserting their rights under the atmosphere of the manosphere. So it's white, dominant men that are basically seeing themselves as a hierarchy, and they are not to have their rights and not to have their manhood outshined by women. So when you see that, it's telling you that this white man is now one of the faces of evil, which is showing you that this is not just racism, right? And this is just government labeling a whole nother group of people now. So you have the government, which is predominantly white males, right? They have now targeted and profiled a different set of white males that don't have the power, that don't have the affiliation, that's asserting their rights because they feel that something is wrong in society. And one of those things that's wrong is that their masculinity is being attacked. So now you have a split. And this is why I say all white people aren't the same. You have those that are in power that's making everybody fight. Okay? Even white people amongst themselves. And all of the pressures that we go through, whether it's race, whether it's money, whether it's gender, whatever pressure that you feel, because we instinctively and we directly know there's something wrong going on this planet. All of these pressures are coming from external influences. They're not organic. Yes, human beings have their own troubles amongst each other, but a lot of these pressures are from organic stimulus. It's called shock testing, right? And this shock testing is invisible forces, invisible. They're not even invisible. They're right in front of us, but the major players that's responsible for making these events happen are invisible. It's called silent weapons for quiet wars. And I'm going to get into that in another video. Where's that book at? Here it is. Pardon me, y'all. I don't want to make the books full, but in another video I'll get into that. So what's happening is we're being shock tested, right? And by shock tested, I mean that there's people that's empowered that's setting things in motion through things like inflation, right? Printing excess money, creating events like mass shootings and things of these nature that we think are just from random crazy people because they had traumatic childhoods, where in actuality they are trained to kill from the government. All of these type of things, financial pressures, these are the external influences that I'm talking about that cause people to fight amongst themselves, right? On top of the fact that you have family narratives and dysfunction. It's no different when it comes to gender wars. And one of those things that's happening is that between the foods that's mostly estrogen, this excessive push to make people misidentify themselves from something that's natural, like their gender, all of these things and this agenda and push to make you adapt to these type of things is causing friction amongst people that know that this isn't something that's organic. It's not something that's natural to your uninhibited and unhampered mode of development. Meaning that under your normal and natural course of developing from a child into a human being, you have certain processes that are just normal, right? Cells live, cells die, your hormones change as you get older. Certain things just are part of being a human being that happen naturally. When you have these shock testing things like I just mentioned from the people in power, this type of shock testing and these type of artificial events and artificial circumstances that set in motion for us to think that they're real, it changes the natural rate of development as a human being. And those individuals that have their sanity intact and their intuition intact and their soul and spirit intact, they feel that there's something wrong. And when these individuals actually get to research in these things and they get to put the facts to their intuition, they have a conclusive ideal or visual that there's a problem. And when these individuals have concluded that there is a problem, they get the motivation to start speaking out and fighting back. And when they get to start speaking out and fighting back, they now have a conflict with anyone in their life and society that has an opposite narrative that's telling them that they're crazy and that there is nothing wrong. Everything that you're seeing is not artificial, it's not staged, it's all organic, and you should just accept it. And you speaking out is showing that you're crazy, you're a misogynist, racist, or whatever these things that they use to guilt trip you into thinking that your intuition and your soul and your spirit that's talking to you is wrong. I know I said a lot on that, but it's important to lay that context down. We as human beings are fighting each other right now because there's large forces at play, governmental forces, bloodline forces, and spiritual forces that all coalesce to make us divide amongst ourselves. And one of the major divisions that's going on right now is gender division. And one of the ways in which people are fighting this orchestrated effort to divide us is men. So these men that have their intuition intact, like I just explained, they are coming together, right? And they're saying enough is enough. And in that enough is enough, they're organizing, they're mobilizing, and they're being vocal, and they're growing. And in their growing, they are affecting individuals who don't normally have the courage to speak out and identify, or the knowledge to identify what's going on, and the movement is growing. This movement is the manosphere. That is the label that's attached to it. Even if you're a man and you don't subscribe to the label of the manosphere and you don't like some of the people and the tenants and you're like, I'm not part of the manosphere, but you still feel that there's something wrong, you still feel that your masculinity is being attacked, then even though you're not part of the manosphere, you are still, based on this document that I'm reading from, are within that to some degree. You are in the periphery. And the more you assert your rights as a male and you identify that there's a problem, even if you're not formally a part of the manosphere and the subtenants of the manosphere, you are dancing around that ring where you could be labeled as a person in the manosphere. And it might have already happened if you talk to women, if you talk to feminists, if you talk to feminist men, they will already put that label of, oh, you're red pill, which is another name for it. Oh, you're manosphere. Oh, you're misogynist, right? Oh, you're toxic masculinity. All of these are social narrative talking points to put you in a psychological prison of guilt. So therefore, you can't assert what you know and feel and intuit is true. And the government now has made it to where these type of individuals, these men, are on the radar. Okay? Let me keep going. It says, more recently, some scholars have observed a personalized and inclusive masculinity meant to replace hegemonic masculinity. Debbie Ging points out that expressions of heteromasculinity have shifted over generations to include clothing, hairstyles, emotional expression, affect, and other cultural markers that have not traditionally been associated with hegemonic descriptions. Some see this shift as a positive move away from hegemonic masculinity and toward heterosexual men being less homophobic and less violent toward women in a post-feminist society. Okay? Now, that's why I wanted to do this video, because there is a problem going on. And this manosphere now has been infiltrated by the government, which leads me to the other part of this video, which is going to highlight one of the major front pieces that people are attached to the manosphere, and it's by a gentleman named Myron Gaines. Now, Myron Gaines has a podcast called Fresh and Fit. And in this podcast, he's similar to Andrew Tate, right? Except Andrew Tate talks more about the Matrix. I had a video about that, but that's neither here nor there. So Myron Gaines, when you watch him, you'll see that he's kind of overboard. Okay, it's like watching some of his stuff. It's like, yeah, some of it is true, but then you can see that a lot of it is exaggerated, because it's like, yeah, okay, you got a point, but now you're going over the top. Okay, and a lot of the stuff that he says, it to me is antics. So when you see anybody giving you truth with antics, or they're giving you truth with some of the mainstream, you got to be skeptical of these people. Because, or when you see people give you truth and then what they're saying is like on point, and then you know they're supposed to go to the next step with the truth, but then they never get to that next step, it's like, now you're just saying enough to rope me in just so you could give me the propaganda, just so you can keep me at a certain level where I don't go. Because when you're searching for truth, there is no ceiling. The only ceiling is your threshold for pain, because the more truth you learn, the more intelligence you gain, the more pain that comes with that, the more disappointment. That's the only ceiling. Outside of that, when you're searching for truth, there is no ceiling. You never stop. Once you say you got truth, then you start dying. You're supposed to seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, from the womb to the tomb. So when you see people like Myron Gaines, right, they're giving you the truth with the antics. So that's a level of confusion to split your brain up so you can stay running in place like a treadmill, as opposed to keep taking it to the next level. Okay? And what's what's real unique about him was that he actually worked for Homeland Security. He worked for Homeland Security. So now that's suspicious in itself, because it always seems like when you see people like a lot of these mass shooters, a lot of these people in these staged events, when you do the research, you always notice that they have some kind of connection to the FBI. Like, really? You just so happen to shoot up a club? I used to argue with my friend about this, about Pulse nightclub, and I'm like, Okay, let's say people did die. You telling me that it's just natural for this person to just automatically turn crazy, and then it turns out that he has ties to the FBI? That doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? What the average crazy person doesn't have ties to the CIA. The average crazy person doesn't have ties to the FBI. And it just so happens whenever we see these things on television of people killing people, shooting up schools, and doing all this madness, they seem to have some kind of ties to the military, to CIA, to the FBI. There's always some kind of law enforcement background of some sorts. No, if these people are legit crazy, they wouldn't have these backgrounds because there's a lot of mental illness going around and damn near 400 million Americans. How come you don't see these people that have all of these issues doing all of these mass terrorist attacks? You don't see it. You might see some craziness on the New York subway. You might see something crazy at a fast food restaurant, but you don't see them shooting up schools. Why you don't never see that in the hood? The only mass shootings in the hood is urban violence, and they don't have no ties to the FBI. Gangs aside. So that's why all of this is a farce. So when it comes to someone like Myron Gaines, working or used to work for Homeland Security, and now all of a sudden he's a YouTube star, and now all of a sudden he's associated with the face of the manosphere, giving all of this advice about how to bag chicks and how to be this kind of man. That's suspect. And what's more suspect is that this document that I'm reading that gives a detailed analysis of the manosphere um, was December 20th. The same time, December 2020, not December 20th, December 2020 was the same time that Myron Gaines left Homeland Security. So this document that I'm reading that's breaking down the manosphere um, was put out the same time Myron Gaines left Homeland Security. What's the odds of that? December 2020. And all of a sudden now he's on YouTube and he's huge. And that's what I'm saying. Anytime you see these people out the blue pop off on YouTube and you look at their YouTube channel and you don't see 10 years, 8 years, 7 years, 6 years, or even 5 years, they come out the gate 2 or 3 years, even if it's not someone like Myron Gaines, that's suspect. They're either plants or there's something behind them, some machine behind them that's making them blow up. They're not just going viral. Same thing with music, same thing with Hollywood. So that's important. So when you see a lot of these people on YouTube associated with the red pill, associated with the manosphere, associated with men asserting their rights, it's challenging to see what's legitimate because there's a lot of truth in it. Yes, men are being attacked. Men don't have a support group. They don't. Women have a support group, right? Women could strip. Women could go on OnlyFans. They could completely screw up, and society's gonna accept them, right? You can have all type of pornography on Twitter where women is doing all type of madness online, and that's okay, right? You can have porn on Twitter. There's no outcry. There's no backlash. There's none of that, right? But all of a sudden, when men are asserting their rights, you got Homeland Security making detailed analysis and studies about it and how to break them up, infiltrate them, and how to acclimate men to not be a part of it, to be softer, and to accept all of this feminization that's going on. That's a problem. So when you see something like that, it has to make you question, okay? It has to make you question because it's a clear agenda to shift men towards one direction, and that's becoming more feminine. If you have more feminized men, you're less likely to speak out. And when you have a power structure that's dedicated towards dividing all groups of people, one of the worst things you could do is have people speak out. And that's why 2019 was so important, because 2019 you have more populism, which is speaking out against the elite, more than ever before. Every corner of the earth you had citizens of countries on all the continents taken to the streets fighting their government because their government was oppressing them. And then all of a sudden after 2019 we had this pandemic. So things like that you got to look at. So now you have this movement of men asserting their rights because they just want to be men. And now you have the government making a concerted effort to put their plants and have their people infiltrate these movements. So men that are looking at that are looking for guidance, that are looking for to better themselves because they know something is wrong or because they don't have the right inner equipment, or should I say inner development, to navigate the landscape of what's going on, especially dealing with women. And there's more articulate, charismatic men that are able to explain it. Some of them are genuine. That's a problem, because if you're empowering men, that's counter to the LGBTQ agenda that's being pushed. It's counter to the feminist movement that's being pushed for the last 50 years, and that can't happen. Okay? So this is why you see that, and this is why I wanted to go make this video. I'm going to read this last part. It says, sentiment is increasing within the Homeland Security community that the manosphere, and specifically incels are involuntary celibates, right? So that's another catchphrase for that describes men that are celibate, but not because they choose to. They're celibate because they don't have the inner fortitude to be able to talk to women, to get them to have sex with them, or to make themselves more appealing to women, so women would be able to get with them in some sort of relationship or intimate capacity. So those type of men that haven't cultivated those inner skills to deal with women, to make themselves more attractive to women, they call them incels, or involuntary celibates, which is another part of the so-called manosphere. All right, now it says sentiment is increasing within the Homeland Security community that the manosphere, and specifically incels, are an emerging terrorist threat, in part due to several high-profile mass murders. Now, we're getting to the meat of it. Now we're seeing what the government is using, right, as their primary front reason for infiltrating the manosphere and also dismantling, no pun intended, the manosphere. Mass terrorist shootings. Now, if I already addressed that these mass shooters have government connections, and they're almost always Manchurians, Tavistock trained, completely mind controlled killers, the question then becomes, if they're saying that these incels are responsible for certain type of shootings against and harm against women, my question is, are these same so-called terrorists and mass shooters, are they organic? Are they genuinely men that are sexually frustrated, that are taking their anger out on women and committing these kind of acts? Or are these the same old Manchurians that are do school shootings and all these other type of shootings that are government-sponsored killers, and are they infiltrating or have infiltrated the so-called manosphere and the incel movement, right? And under that guise, the government is using to shut down the manosphere as a whole. I hope that made sense. So they're using these groups of people that they're saying are responsible for harming women and killing them, and these mass shootings and these terrorist attacks. They're using that as the majority reason as to why people in the manosphere could possibly be terrorists. So they're putting manosphere in the terrorist organization group. So it's real, see that, and that's part of the sophistication that you have to look out for, right? Because now they're playing on the fears of America by saying, oh, these people are terrorists. Anytime you want to hear, anytime you see the terrorist label, it's almost always associated with either people that are affiliated with the government, or it's a way to neutralize a movement from a given group of people that feel marginalized, or that have identified that there's something wrong and they're speaking out against it, and that their speaking out is now getting stronger and it's affecting more people. The minute you see that happen, the terrorist label comes. That's it. So this is what's happening when men asserting their rights. So as a man, you have to really you have to really personally develop, right? You have to increase your sincerity. You have to increase your respect level, because if you're a person that does not want to just sit back and take the programming and you decide to speak up, you have to carry yourself in a way in which that terrorist label does not apply to you, you know? So that's why I wanted to do this video. So that's very important. So to sum it all up, this gender war and all the other divisions that you could think of is part of outside stimulus. It's called shock testing. When I go over the Bilderberg video, I'm a show that in that book, Behold the Pale Horse, and it's Silent Weapons, Secret, what is it? Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. I'm going to demonstrate that. So whenever you're dealing with each other, men and women, just take note that when you argue, ask yourself how much of that is the person, how much of that is your personal trauma, and how much of your arguing amongst ourselves is outside stimulus from this shock testing from people in power that are creating scenarios that's making us so stressed that we can't even function, that we're just so agitated that we just take it out on each other. Women have their gripes that is valid. Men have their gripes that are valid. So it's important for us to set aside the conversation where we can argue, have it out, and we can start to minimize the toxicity. Now, in terms of men, men are under attack. Men are under attack for their masculinity. Men are under attack just for being men, okay? Men don't have a support group, okay? And there's a lot of stuff that you see happening that if a man did it, it'd be all crazy and spooky. So that's why I wanted to do this video. So when you're looking at the manosphere and you come across any man that's asserting his rights, understand that with this kind of document, the government now has made it to where that is under the guise of terrorism. So when you see these events coming up in the news, and when you start hearing these terms, red pill, MGTOW, manosphere, incels, whenever you hear any individual that's not even formally a part of those labels, but they're speaking along the same lines, don't be surprised if you see another manufactured news event, another manufactured shooting, another manufactured circumstance in which they label someone with these views as the person that did these things. And don't be surprised when you do your research if they have some kind of government affiliation, or if it just doesn't make sense what they're telling you. And be aware of these people on YouTube that's getting these quick followings, that's telling you all these things, because some of these people are making it to where they're saying such things towards women that's so outlandish that it actually distracts from the genuine men that are identifying that there's something wrong, but they're not totally abusing women. They're not abusing women at all. They're not harmful to women. But these individuals that are plants are saying things that's so outlandish, it's making them think that all men that think that way or along those lines are dangerous, abusive, and harmful, which is not the case. And that's why they have plants and infiltrate movements like that, to make these figures charismatic and then have them say the craziest things, and everybody is thrown under the bus, even if you're sincere, even if you love and treat women with respect. So be mindful of that. So with that, thank you again. I know this was a long video in the attention span of a 3-minute culture. So what? So please subscribe, please like. I appreciate all your comments and feedback. Happy New Year. We're going to be consistent this year. That's the theme. Much love, y'all. Keep your sanity. Peace.